Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
Welcome to Crosspointe.
We are an inclusive faith community
seeking to live out the loving, just, and generous way of Jesus.
We are participants in a long tradition.
It's less concerned with doctrines and dogma that demand total agreement,
but a life to be lived, enjoyed, and given away to others.
What unites us is a growing awareness that life is precious.
That we are made by love in order to love.
This community is comprised of and affirms the entire human family.
Regardless of race, age, creed,
physical abilities, marital or economic status,
gender identity, or sexual orientation.
So, if you're curious and have come to see,
if you are tired and have come to rest,
if you are grateful and have come to share,
if you are wounded and have come to heal,
if you're joyful and have come to celebrate,
if you are uprooted and have come to belong,
welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
Welcome home.
I searched the world, it couldn't fill me. Mind's empty praise and treasures that fade are never enough. And you came along and put me back together. Satisfied here in your love. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing is better than you. I'm not afraid to show you my weakness, my failures and flaws. Lord, you've seen them all. You still call me friend, 'cause the God of the mountain is the God of the valley. Your mercy and grace will find me again. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing is better than you. You turn mourning to dancing. You give beauty for ashes. You turn shame into glory. You're the only one who can. You turn graves into gardens. You turn boats into armies. You turn seas into highways. You're the only one who can. You're the only one who can. Oh, there's nothing better than you. There's nothing better than you. There's nothing is better than you.
your children and their children and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations of your family and your children and their children and their children. May his favor be upon you and 1,000 generations of your family and your children and their children and their children. May his presence go before you and behind you and beside you, all around you and within you. He is with you, he is with you. In the morning, in the evening, you're coming and you're going, you're weeping and rejoicing. He is for you, 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 he is for you. Amen. Amen.
Good morning, Crosspointe. It's great to be with you today. We are really excited to begin offering some safe opportunities for kids to see each other in person. And one of those is coming up in our Kids Point Color Run. It's being held on Sunday, May 23rd at 11:30 in the Crosspointe parking lot. For more information and to register, you can visit crosspoint.org/colorrun. One of my favorite things that we do around here is baby dedication. Baby dedication is an opportunity for parents at the very beginning of their child's life to think about what matters most. And it's also an opportunity for us as your church community to come alongside you and start partnering with you from the very beginning on your child's journey of faith. We're holding our next baby dedication on Saturday, June 19th, outdoors at Crosspointe. For more information and to register, you can visit crosspoint.org/baby dedication. If you'd like to partner with us financially in all the things that are going on at Crosspointe, there's lots of ways that you can do that. You can mail in a check, you can give online, you can pay through PayPal. You can find out about all these and more opportunities at crosspoint.org/contribute, or you can text CrosspointeNC to 77977. Thanks so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning. I want you to think just for a second about a couple of phrases. The words, I cannot, or the words, I cannot produce. In a society where success is a part of our cultural DNA, this can be a really scary thought, because from the time we're born, we're given measures of success that are really defined by our levels of productivity. I mean, think about that for a minute. Have you ever been told when you're a child or an adult that the goal of education or parenting or becoming an adult was to become a productive member of society or something along those lines? Has been said to you. Even if that's never been said to you directly, think about all the ways that our society reinforces that idea. What are our measures of success? I mean, grades determine the success of a student. If they'll go to a college, be qualified as successful adults. Jobs define our place in the community, depending on the value that our community places on them, especially if it offers retirement insurance and a vacation package. We have status in our home, especially if we own it or we're close to owning it, or certain neighborhoods that we live in. How well we are doing in our lives at least outwardly, is typically determined by promotions, by trophies, medals, awards, honor rolls, test scores, diplomas, rank. These are important ways of showing the world, gauging how productive we are. There was one point in my life where I trained and ran this particular 5 Quick K, and I was so disappointed that they didn't give out t-shirts at the end or at the beginning, because how in the world would anybody know that I had done it? It's super awkward to wear a medal around everywhere you go. T-shirts are much better conversation starters. Well, for many of us, how much and how well we accomplish things is of utmost importance to who we are, how we think about ourselves, and our ranking in the world. But if the goal is to become a productive member of society and to achieve success, we have to ask the questions: whose society? Who's defining success? The measures are really fluid depending upon who's doing the measuring. So in this ongoing series that we're in, 7 Monsters, we've been examining things in our lives that often grab a hold of us. You might refer to them as vices. And today we're talking about the monster of vanity. And when I hear the word vanity, it calls to mind movie stars and reality television and the Kardashians, or at its base level, somebody who spends all their time looking in the mirror, worried about how they look, really because they're worried about what other people feel about them or how other people see them, or more deeply, they want to look how they are supposed to. And on a very surface level, yes, concern for your image is vanity, but the word vanity in its truest form simply means vapor or breath. Vapor is something that's there one moment and then gone the next. You can't hold on to it. Vanity is when there's too much effort put into something that ultimately doesn't last, or frankly doesn't really matter. Now, King Solomon, he's one of the kings in the Hebrew Bible. He's King David's son. He's sometimes thought of as the wisest man who ever lived. He requested wisdom from God, and then in addition to wisdom, God gave him enormous wealth. And with that came all the things that money and power could acquire: land, people, prestige, stuff. He knew all the important people of the time. There's a story about the Queen of Sheba visiting him and asking him for advice. But in the midst of all of the things that he had and all of the things that he did, Solomon is attributed to having written this book of wisdom we refer to as Ecclesiastes. The man who accomplished everything that was deemed important in his life says in Ecclesiastes, actually, all the accomplishments aren't worth much. And he says it like this: vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What do people gain from all the toil at which they toil under the sun? I consider all that my hands have done and the toil I had spent doing it. And again, all was vanity and a chasing after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. Now, if that isn't reason enough to keep on our pajama pants and keep streaming Netflix every day after COVID ends, I don't know what is. If only that were what Solomon was giving us permission to do. But the problem with vanity is not necessarily thinking of yourself more highly than you ought. Vanity is when we are defined by our doing, not our being. Vanity is knowing what success is, what it's defined as in every situation, and then becoming that person so that you can accomplish whatever and whoever is needed to succeed. And not just to succeed, but to knock whatever challenge or task you're given out of the park. This could be relationships, jobs, volunteering, parenting, friendships, even spirituality and faith. Because when someone presents a challenge, you know that you are just the person to handle it, no matter what it is, because you're going to do things right and you're going to do things well, and everything else falls to the wayside. Vanity is when the production becomes the goal and everything else is peripheral, or it's just collateral damage to achieve it. And vanity at its root is all about the applause that we receive, because that's how we measure love. I know how much I'm loved because of how loudly people approve of what I've done. Vanity is a transactional way of living, because deep down, we don't believe that love can be unconditionally given. It is a wholly ridiculous concept. There are strings directly attached to our performance. The more I do, the better I perform, the more I produce, the more valuable I make myself to people and society, the more worthy of love I am. And so I will become the best, most reliable, competent, and efficient person in the room so that you will applaud me and I will be worth it. And we believe that if people like what we do, they will like us. So we have to keep doing and doing and doing. And can you see this cycle? But at some point, we have to get off the carousel. Because when we view life through vanity eyes, our worth is based not upon who we are as people created in the image of God, but on what we can contribute. It defines how worthy we are to be in the company of others, to be in a job or a relationship, to be on the planet. And deep down, we believe that if we stop contributing, then we stop being valuable. This also makes failure really hard. But our lives are more than the systems we put in place to keep doing. So when vanity is our struggle, this makes us spend more time on the hypothetical mirror, putting on whatever costume or mask we need to in order to achieve ultimate success and to produce at the highest level. And in the midst of all of that, we end up so much time being what others say we need to be so that we can be their definition of successful, that we lose who we really are underneath all that doing and accomplishing and producing. We don't know how to be. We only know how to do. Because who are we when all of those achievements are taken away? When the show is done and the lights are out, who remains? You may have heard the story in the Gospels, the stories that are told about Jesus, about someone we refer to as the rich young ruler. There's two things to note here. First, this name, rich young ruler, comes from a combination of all three stories, where his story is told in the Bible. And the guy, we don't actually know his name. That's just what we call him. Second, it's important to know where this story comes in the New Testament. It's directly after the story of the children who come to Jesus. And in that story, the children come to Jesus and he welcomes them. He even tells his disciples to quit bothering them and to let him come, because Jesus isn't bothered by their simplicity and their innocence and their honesty. Jesus has time for them to just be kids. And unlike our society today, where children are often allowed opinions and choices, children at that time had no rights, had no status in society. And to the disciples, they were just a waste of Jesus' time. He had much more important things to do. But Jesus says, actually, the little nobodies, they were closer to the truth. Jesus said that in order to achieve citizenship into the kingdom of God, you first had to become like a little child. And that made absolutely no sense to the disciples and the people listening. What? Why would you even become something like that? Why would you become somebody who can't take care of themselves, who can only speak when spoken to, when you've spent so much time and effort and energy into growing up? But what Jesus is giving advice to, what he's saying in becoming a child, is this admonition to not be a man, and therefore not a husband or a father, a provider, to not be a woman, and therefore not a wife, not a mother, not a servant. In other words, Society is going to give you definitions and parameters of what a successful adult means, what a man's supposed to do and to know and to be, and what a woman's supposed to know and to be and to do. And they're going to measure you by these things. But definitions are not important, and they do not define the most important thing about you. So by Jesus telling the disciples to become like children, he's suggesting they should desire a different identity for themselves than the one that the world around them gives them. One that is more about being than doing. So it's after this story that we have the narrative of the rich young ruler. And he is the definition of the world's success. This man comes to Jesus. He's called the rich young ruler. In other words, he's not that far removed from the children Jesus was just with. It hasn't been that long since he wasn't defined by society's view of success. However, unfortunately, this young man now has this very different view and understanding of life. We might say he's matured. He's a realist, right? He is a productive member of society. Well, he comes to Jesus with a single question. What must I do to inherit eternal life? And Jesus kind of gives him this generic answer. The rules and expectations have been clearly laid out in society. You know how the system works. Follow the commandments. Don't murder, don't steal, don't cheat, don't lie. Honor your parents. This list is nothing new. Well, the young man tells Jesus, I've done all that. And not only that, I've done it really well. In fact, I'm super good at it. I am like the example of how to be good at that. I am who people call when they want to know how to get those things done. I have succeeded. Well, if the rich young ruler had asked Solomon this question, Solomon would have said, vanity, it's all vanity. None of it matters. It's a vapor in the wind. This man had money. He had possessions. He apparently had influence and power. He'd figured out the system. He had played the game. He had produced and achieved the success that was prescribed to him. And now he needed to know what else he could do in order to continue this transactional way of living. His accomplishments had defined him, and he needed more things to accomplish. I mean, if you're gonna ask for the big task, the most prestigious portfolio, the most difficult and perplexing problem to solve in the world, to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you are worth it and capable, I guess asking for eternal life and how to get it is at the top of that list. The question he asks Jesus is curious, though. He asks, how can I inherit eternal life? An inheritance wasn't something that you earned. Inheritance is something that you're given, most of the time simply because of where you were born in the sibling lineup. It had very little to do with how much you did. What the rich young ruler might actually be asking is, how do I have a good life? What does it take to have a good life? Well, the book of Mark says that Jesus looked at the rich young ruler and he felt love for him. And it's not just this, oh, cute, you're so sweet, patronizing kind of love. In this text, it's described as love that is agape, unconditional love, all-encompassing. I loved you before you were successful and while you were successful, and I will love you when you are no longer successful. Jesus understood the desire within the man to produce. But Jesus remembered the man when he was a child, before he had determined that the world was all about measuring success. And back when he was sitting at the feet of Jesus and when just being loved was enough. But Jesus loved the man and felt he was enough before he had produced or accomplished anything. Because worth isn't an achievement. If we never produce another thing, we have worth. And Jesus tells the rich young ruler, sell everything, give it to the poor, come follow me. And the young man is devastated. Because Jesus didn't tell him to sell everything and give it to his kids or his wife or to donate it to charity. He said to give it to the people that would be least likely to applaud him for it. And what the rich young ruler expected Jesus to do was to applaud him, to pat him on the back and tell him, well done, here's what you need to do next. The man knew how to work with that. But if no one saw what he did, who was he? And what Jesus was offering the rich young ruler was freedom from the doing. But what the rich young ruler heard was punishment. He didn't know how to be anything else. What Jesus was telling the rich young man was how to have an abundant life outside of production. What the young man wanted was something else to conquer. And for many of us, our worth and value are tied up into what we do and what we can produce. We measure how much we are loved by how much applause we receive. And we cannot imagine our worth being unconditional. There's no way to control or plan for or measure unconditional. But our worth has nothing to do with our achievements. Achievements do not make us better parents, partners, friends, spouses, employees. Success can't be measured by somebody else's values. Who we are is not defined by what we do. It's not defined by what we are able to bring to the table. Vanity is believing the lie that you have to become something you are not in order to be loved. And this is a really difficult thing to unlearn in a society that values production and that has very specific and inflexible measures of success. Or maybe they're too fluid measures, we can't keep track of them. But eventually, we're going to become all those things that we put our energy into. If we put our energy into the standards of other people that other people give us of success and beauty, then we will become the masks we must wear to produce those things. But after we spend so much time and energy into constantly wearing all of those costumes, eventually we don't remember what we look like under them all. Even worse, we forget that we're loved when we aren't wearing them. Now, my siblings and I love to tease my mother about all the funny habits she had when we were kids, and I know that's going to come back to haunt me one day. For example, she used to always say every day, all the time, she used to shout from wherever she was, 15 minutes! She'd shout it from across the house. And we understood that this meant we had 15 minutes. That was our deadline for whatever was about to occur, leaving the house, eating dinner, whatever it was. We hated those words as a kid, but we love to say them now. We love to tease each other about them. That's a greeting, or a farewell, 15 minutes. But we also took a solemn vow with one another that when we were younger and dumber, to never say it to our own children. Well, you can probably see where this is going. A few days ago, I was rounding everyone up to get them out the door for school, and I heard myself shout up the stairs, 15 minutes! And I stopped in my tracks in horror, and then I immediately messaged my siblings in confession and asked for an intervention. But what did I expect? I had spent so much of my time on what I didn't want to be that I hadn't spent any time on what I wanted to be and do instead. And this is a silly example of what happens when we fall into the trap of vanity. All of the energy has been put into what others need, what others expect us to be, that we can succeed as the best and the shiniest and the most competent. Vanity can also leak over into how we view other people. When we view people through the lenses of what our culture says are the best standards of success, it becomes difficult to find the worth in others when they're not producing at the level we believe they should. But if we fall into the trap of believing that certain standards and successes are what measure the worth of a person, what does it mean that we believe about people who do not meet these arbitrary standards? Do we equally respect those who have not achieved the same level we have, don't have the same societal status as we have, are not capable of achieving those things, or aren't reaching their potential like we think we should? How do our feelings of success and the opinions of others determine how we view and communicate with our children? What does this say about how we communicate are loved regardless of the number of AP classes they take, or the colleges they get into or don't, or the scholarships they receive, or whether they're a star on a whatever team? Do we really find value in those who require unemployment to feed their children, even if a job pays less? If a job doesn't pay enough to put food on the table and requires that they have multiple jobs and are not able to be around to parent their kids? Bootstraps and all of that. But what about when the bootstraps look like unemployment and not like an underpaying job? We cannot allow worth to be assigned to the standards of achievement. What about other relationships? Are we able to have non-transactional relationships with others? Are we able to value people because of who they are and not because of what they can do for us? Are we really able to believe that they can love and value us no matter how well we perform? And I want to stop and say really clearly that I don't want to make it sound like I think success is bad. Having a drive to do your best in all things is not a bad thing. Being competent and reliable and efficient and really good at what you do is a really good thing. I want to be on your team. You are the drivers of good things in humanity. You are the people who solve big problems. You are the people who wake up every day believing that, given the opportunity, you will change the world. And we cannot move forward in our world and accomplish important things without people like you. But when you change the world, or when you don't change the world, or when you mess up, or when you don't reach your goals, you are still worth it. You are not defined by what you do. If you never accomplish another thing, if you never produce anything, if you never actually do another thing, you are enough. And we have to change this I cannot produce into I cannot produce. How do we avoid the trap of vanity and learn and lean more into viewing ourselves honestly, as Christ does, as enough? How can we start to put down all the roles we have played for everyone else and see who we are without all the doing? Those things are all vapors. And my suggestion might be a little frustrating because it's probably something that we've all heard a million times. And we've heard it ad nauseum, right? Say this to yourself. I am not what I do. I am not what I produce. I am already enough. You are already loved, just like the children at Jesus' feet. Before you succeed, before you failed, after you failed, before you produced, before you even tried, there is nothing you have to do to be loved more. And that is the truth that vanity tries to take from us. You are already enough. That's the truth. There's nothing more that you can do to be worth more than you are right at this moment. No education, no beauty treatment, no promotion, no perfected image, no relationship, wealth, job, nothing. Those things do not define who you are. I'll say it a couple more times. You are already fully loved, and you are enough. You are enough. You are already enough.
Thank you for joining us today, and welcome home. If you are in need of assistance during this crisis, please reach out at crosspoint.org/help.